We're live.
Everybody know that TV cameras will be coming, so there'll be TVs.
Yeah, let's all hold hands when they come in. Everybody hold hands. United.
You ready to start?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, of course, Matt Dugas, Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, and I have 46 slides in 60 minutes, so I've got a minute and 30 seconds per slide. I will probably go over some really quickly in lieu of future budget sessions, but basically, just want to show you the major sources of revenue that we have currently. Property taxes account for 23%. This is a general fund in the 2002 tax. Sales tax is about 131 million, MFP 158. And other revenue this year is quite large at about 20 million because the state stipend at $8 million, they sent us a $2,000, $1,000 payment is in here. So this graph kind of looks significantly different. There's more other revenue than normal, but that's basically the biggest chunk of that. Divided into our property taxes, we have 4 property taxes, and this is each tax and what that tax collects. I want to highlight the 7.79. We're going to be talking about that renewal coming up. That's the orange section right here of our property taxes. That is up for renewal in October. Here's the breakdown of the sales tax between the 3 taxes we have: the 65 tax, 2002 tax, which we talked about, and the 1988 tax. All these taxes has dedications we're going to talk about in the next slide. The 1965 tax is the simplest tax. It allows for payment of salaries and expenses of operating schools, capital improvements, issuance of debt, or capital improvements. So whenever we have debt that we pay, the source of that payment comes from this sales tax, not the other 2. Because this one specifically allows for debt, the other 2 do not. There's no exemption on food and drugs in this one. I believe with the latest sales tax laws, I think we may get an exemption on food and drugs. I'm not quite sure how that all laid out. 88 tax is basically 6 priorities here that we've run over before. The 2002 tax is again the priorities for that, providing salaries, teacher reserve fund, in the funding levels I pay, so these revenues be periodically distributed a one-time supplement of payment to teachers. This is also tied to an administrative plan that was adopted before the election, which we follow very closely. We'll talk about MFP.
Hi guys, my name is Anthony Luton, Director of Finance. I have a really bad nasal drip, so I'll try to be clear as possible and loud as possible. I'm going to briefly discuss MFP funding. Every school district in the state of Louisiana receives $4,015 for every kid enrolled in their schools. Now, this is just a base level amount. The MFP formula is what actually changes the amount. It can go up or down based on how wealthy the school district is. Now, of course, we do receive additional funding for students who are economically disadvantaged, or students that are enrolled in career and technical courses, students with disabilities, and of course, students that are considered gifted and talented. My son is considered GT, so I can say the Luton family probably helps the school district raise money. So we also have 2 other daughters that missed it by like 1 or 2 points. So we might try again, but who knows? But the most important thing I want to highlight on this slide is that our net MFP allocation for the school district this year is $124 million. This is after all of the cuts. $52.9 million that we are expected to transfer to charter schools this year as of right now. Now, in a few more slides down the road, I'll discuss more of the charter school situations, but this is expected to grow up. So just keep that in mind. Okay?
Where does the money go? A lot of people ask this question. Basically, about 71.5% goes just salaries and employees. This is the 2002 tax in the general fund. As you see, the percentages between instructional materials is only about 1.6%. Repairs and maintenance about 2.8%. Utilities 2.3%, and transfer other funds 4%. So basically, this is how the fund breaks out. You notice charter schools is now taking up to 11%. This was 7% last year. So this is significantly increasing in this charter school portion. And when you see MFP revenue in the CAFR, just keep in mind that they make us recognize that MFP that they send to the charter schools as revenue for us. They make us show it as revenue, and then they make us show it's sending it out, even though we never touched it. They send it directly, but they run it through us. Accounting-wise, we're required to record. So you may see this big spike in MFP revenue. That doesn't mean we get to keep it. The bond rating, and we've gone over this, we've worked really hard over my 31 years to get this bond rating the highest in the state, higher than the state of Louisiana. When we issued the Lafayette High debt, Lafayette High Prairie, Campbell Heights debt, it was one of the best issues in the history of our financial advisors. It's top 3, and he's been doing this for 40 years. So,
Matt, why did they make us filter through the charter school money if it's a state, it's a type 2 charter and we've never approved it? Why do we have to take any responsibility or do any effort on behalf of charter schools?
that's how they get around it. That's how they play the shell game that they say they're sending it to us and they're requiring us to send it to them.
Is that, and so we may have somebody do a legislative bill to avoid that?
It would change the accounting, it wouldn't change where the money goes.
Right, but actually, it would
But
at
it makes
least
it look
have
like,
us
oh,
be
we got
able
all
to
this state
show,
money, and then no,
it would at least show us as in the true picture.
more of a true picture.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Because that way they can call it, they can take portions of our sales tax that is dedicated to switching to MFP and then take all the MFP away so that they show us whole
Yes,
without actually being whole.
because that is it's showing it, that's a reduction, right, or a, what do you call it, offset,
It's a reduction.
it's a reduction.
Reduction,
It
they
makes
say,
us expense them, like, it shows like we're spending on something else when we're really not.
Yeah,
like 87 tax, you know, if we get 20 million, and they say, and this is how I explained to the legislators, and when we were in that session, I was shocked about how they didn't know this. I'm
Yeah.
talking to them, they're looking at me like, first time they've ever heard this. And
Yeah.
they keep saying, well, they said it was state funding, they said it was state funding, and technically it is. But all they do is say, oh, you connected this property tax, that portion of the students should go to charter schools, we're gonna reduce your MNP by that amount. But we're gonna make you account for 100% of the requirement, so the money follows the kid, and designation put on, the restriction put on there by the taxpayer does not follow.
yeah.
That's the whole, that is a huge, huge problem that is literally unsustainable.
Can the money ever come back?
No.
The kid, so if the kid,
That's a
So
certain
the
point.
kid comes back, okay, the kid comes back
Before.
before October 1st, which I'm told we see kids come back in October, and I hear this from the schools. We see this large amount of kids come back in October. They get the October money, which is half. In February, they're true it up, but we'll only get half back, even though that kid came back October 2nd, October 3rd, whenever they came
So that's the
back.
cutoff date, October 1st.
October 1st is the count,
so you can only get half.
and then February 1st is the count. So you get half back if they dump the kid after the first, after October 2nd.
So the charter
And we have to
student
accept
comes back October 2nd, we do these out in half their monthly
Half
dollars a
the,
year.
half the state money, half the
And the
local
charter
money.
company gets to keep it and they don't have to educate the child.
Correct, especially their sped.
Yeah.
Because then they get that sped count, they get 2.5% of the MFP allocated to them, and then we get the sped kid, and Holly does all these wonderful things. It's not very expensive, you know, they're very wonderful things. But you're gonna see our sped population is still increasing, just not dramatically as it was previous year.
And your zone schools have to take them back, right? That's October 1st.
Holly? Yeah. Holly.
Have you pinpointed what laws
We have to
would
take them
have
back,
to
and we have to meet
fix?
all those
Requirements.
exceptionalities that she was talking about. We have to
Right.
provide the nice
With
equipment,
the money.
wheelchairs, anything that, I mean, they're looking from a corporate, if I was the corporate person for a charter school, that's what they're trying to do. You want the cheapest kids for the most revenue, and that's how you run it. That's how you run a business. In fact, we're not a business, we're a school system. You know, our responsibility to cover kids, to me, is more than a profit motive, and it shouldn't be a profit motive. But that's a different world.
Pete, to your point, before we can identify any laws that need to be changed, first thing we gotta do is educate, because our legislators, and this is not a slight to them,
Yeah.
they are being taught that no local money follows that child. That's what they're being taught in
Yeah,
that group.
yep,
And technically, I guess, they can be taught that because the money is state MFP dollars, but what they don't know is that we're being reduced by the amount of
Yeah.
our local
of our local.
money.
tax,
And
yeah.
so we've already gotten a handful or about a handful of legislators to understand that. Now how do we get the rest of them to understand it?
Yeah.
Then once they understand it, they have to be able to agree with it and get off of the, lobbying efforts, charter schools. Then we have to, I don't know if we can undo any of these laws, but at least moving forward,
Yeah,
stop the bleeding.
I'll give you the counter argument for the charter school. Our schools are always full, so it washes out. Bellevue it does not wash out. But that's the counter
Yeah.
argument to the whole
is
thing.
that they're gonna take another kid from us on the waiting list
We're full.
and not get the $15, yeah.
And I was really shocked when I told them they looked at me and said, you mean they get part of your ad valorem tax? I'm like, yeah. And I was shocked that they were shocked, and I was like, okay. But I thought that was a very good meeting, and I thought that is the start of the process of people realizing it. And a lot of those, the two legislators we met with have districts in Vermillion Parish. Well, now they're seeing the Vermillion Charter taking money from Vermillion schools, and now it's a thing.
Yes.
So I finally heard words of encouragement I've not heard before in that meeting with, we've got to slow this down, we've got to get control of this, because once they're here, they're not leaving.
Right.
Once that gets in the tin.
They also were aware that there's no cap on growth, that when their growth was not tied to any specific numbers. And they said y'all did a great job explaining that. Plus, they didn't understand that we passed a new tax, that every portion of the new tax had to go before we did the charter school.
So
So
if
they
we want
had to do
to,
nothing to get that tax
if
passed.
we want to build a new school and we go out to the voters and ask for a tax to pay to that school, we have to give them a portion of that tax. So we will not be made whole. So if we go and issue debt, we currently don't have any debt that's tied to property taxes. Most districts do, and those charter schools get a piece of that debt payment.
Yeah,
So-
but kudos to y'all for a good job of educating them. Yeah, we've got to get the education community to understand. We've got to get whoever to understand how the money actually works. So good job on
And I
getting
asked
that
Beth
ball.
that about 6 months ago, and I said, yeah. And she said, well, nobody's saying anything. Yes, we are.
Have we ever done any sort of education with our Acadian delegation at the state level?
Not from the school system, no.
Well,
Is that
what we,
possible?
what we did is, we brought in, Representative Landry, we brought in, who else was there? Troy there.
Yeah,
So that may be to where, I think you're right, we can maybe get, the senators and the representatives together and really just kind of come in. They actually said that they were gonna get some other people, other representatives into our district to see how we do it.
yeah, Josh Carlson had a follow-up call with them, so I know there's some education committees. I know that they are starting to discuss it openly, and we just need to keep fostering those discussions.
We'll follow them.
Yeah.
And I can get on my charter school soapbox, but, I call these charters predatory charters because they are not charters that were, the initial meaning of the charter was to go into at-risk neighborhoods and provide alternative sources of education for those kids. They're going into wealthy neighborhoods and providing nothing different than we're providing. And that's what the person that looked at the school in Broussard said to the state, and they didn't care. They're doing nothing different.
Yeah.
They're just taking wealthy students away in wealthy areas and zapping money. That's exactly the opposite of that charter law, was to do the opposite. And they're taking that and they're going the other direction.
Yeah, I know New Iberia is expressing fear on that too, because they're losing that large number
And
of.
St. Martin.
Yeah.
Because they put it right on the border of those three districts. From what I understand, it's gonna be almost on the border of Lafayette Parish and St. Martin Parish near the rec park in Broussard.
Yes, exactly.
Hey guys, I want to talk about the bond rating. I want to hone in on this. I'm going to talk really slow because I want you guys to really understand this. So back in 2019, our schools district received the highest bond rating that I believe we've ever had. And it's taken us a very, very long time to get to that status, thanks to the CFO at the time and the Director of Finance at the time. And this is based off of conservatism and financial planning. Now, you may be asking, well, what's the big deal about this? It's a great deal because the higher your bond rating, it's the lower your interest costs whenever you issue debt for construction. That is the significance behind it. Now, the problem is, well, the good news is that this is where we are today. We've been there for several years. Now, the moment we start spending all of our contingency money, our rainy day fund money, and other pots of money, that projects weakness to these rating agencies, and that's where our bond rating can potentially start to drop. And of course, interest rates, that's relative to the market at the time. But this, we have been favored for a long time, so we have to keep this in mind. You know, from a financial perspective, we need to keep this intact. We need to protect this, because this has helped us a lot. Currently, we have $577 million in outstanding debt. I wish we had a millage to pay for that, but we don't. We have to pay for it out of pocket. This slide here shows our outstanding debt, and unfortunately, we're not paying off anything anytime soon. As you can see in fiscal year 2032, that is the first opportunity that we'll pay off some debt. And unfortunately, I might be the only person in the room here that'll still be here working for the district at that time. So I will celebrate on your behalf when we pay for it.
I'll be here.
All right? We'll hold down the board. So at this point in time, it's only about a $2.3 million difference that will free up the general fund, or rather debt service fund. So we have some debt, y'all. And now we're looking at possibly issuing more debt, so we just have to be cognizant about the bond rating and our financial planning going forward.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you explain why that bond rating is so important? Like, why would we?
Interest
stay
rates.
up? Okay.
Interest rates. That's the bottom line.
It's like your FICO score.
Yeah, the higher your rate, that's the lower your interest rate. Just like you buy a house, it's the same concept.
It's just like high rating.
Yes.
If we take on more debt, as you just said, if we decide to do another bond sale, do you anticipate that immediately will affect our bond rating?
Well, there's some other factors when you issue debt as far as rating agencies concerned. There's they have their matrix that they look at, financial planning, some other criteria. So it's hard to answer that question, but the more debt that you rack on, it does play a part in it, yes.
Thank you.
Question.
Yes.
So if we put a dollar into debt, how much do we get in capacity?
Well, the last time we checked is about maybe $12.5 million, but that's,
Every
you know,
billion we get about
12 to 1.
yeah.
Depending on the interest rate, 12 or 13 to 1.
And where was it like 4 years ago?
That,
More like 15 or 16 because of the lower rate.
yeah, I mean, rates were like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we got.
It's good for us.
That
Very
high
nice.
rate
Yeah,
is-
just,
Yeah, and like I said, the USDA rate we got for Southside was 2.3%. We booked that for 4 years. You know, we grabbed that money. That's the lowest I've ever seen. That's incredible. That was federal. The Winter Lafayette High was a little higher, but it was still for the market was incredibly low.
Now, the Feds just recently decreased rates by 25 basis points, so that 12.5 number could fluctuate a little bit, maybe not, but we'll see. Now, the next slide is the same information, just showcased a little bit differently. So we have $442 million in sales tax debt. We have $16 million in non-sales tax debt.
When I say sales tax debt, remember I said the 65 tax, so the bond, the payment for the 65 tax, the first thing that happens is you get payment. So Stacy sends that money to the debt service fund before we even see the sales tax, income from the 65. And this is the other debt, which is basically our constitutional property tax.
Right, and we currently owe $98 million on the Southside High School.
Can we talk a little bit about the budget process? And this is just kind of a little recap of the budget process, but I want y'all to see, we have a link there to the budget, but I want y'all to see, this is our calendar for the budget process. There are 66 steps. So we follow this on the calendar. There's so many dominoes that need to fall that we track every day. And this is human resources and everybody else. We put in the holidays, everything, so that we can meet the requirement of adopting the budget this year in June. We've pushed it later because of all the uncertainties and decisions that have to happen. What I'm going to ask the boards that when we get to the budget process, most of these controversial decisions are already made, that we don't have a budget process where we start changing the budget live on the floor. That becomes very chaotic, and it's a domino effect of everything. So I just wanted to let you know this is our plan on the calendar of everything that has to happen during the budget process. This is not just like some simple stuff. So we're some here in January. We're working on looking at scrubbing some of the accounts we started today, digging into the details, historical spending patterns. We're looking at all different avenues to see where we can get some savings for some of the challenges that are coming up. So this is the budget recap and timeline. Y'all presented this is the last budget meeting. This is the updated schedule based on the Thursday meetings. So we've adjusted everything. We've kept this one on Wednesday because this is probably going to be the long meeting. This will be the first time you're going to see the preliminary general fund budget. All the other budgets will be presented much earlier, but the big fun ones, the group insurance in the general fund will be the challenges. So we didn't want a meeting lurking after that in case it went long. So that'll give us a open time limit to hopefully get all this resolved so that we can bring everything back to you on May 15th, and then we start the legal process of public advertisement and inspection period before we actually have a hearing and adopt the budget. Most people just have a hearing. We, transparency, have all of this.
So Matt, let me say this, and I've seen some of you email people just recently about they need to be involved with this. I mean, like Matt has it laid out. I think that all of these people that are complaining about why we're not doing this, listen, get involved with the budget process. This is where you can hear from him and his team of what is going on. So many people think that we can do this, we can do that. I mean, there's lots of different things that we are saying, here's the budget, come and listen. So I think that if we just take this timeline, and they need to know these dates, just blast them. Hey, get involved, be a part of it. I saw you did that. I think you did it with some of these different emails that people were just saying, well, why y'all have money for this or whatever. Well, get involved.
Where's your money go? Right. And I mean, I'm assuming LafayetteCheckbook.com, we're the only parish that actually tells you dollar by dollar where we're spending our money. So not only can they come to a budget meeting and see what we projected, but then they can actually see dollar by dollar what we're doing.
Absolutely.
Are we still thinking a $38 million shortfall, or are we thinking more?
We're going to get into a little bit more of that. The $38 million, I believe, is coming from a meeting we had early in the 24 budget process where I laid out all the challenges.
Yeah.
Now that was the challenges. We came back with solutions and we balanced the budget. So we got rid of the $38 million through a myriad of cuts and additional revenue and ESSER funds and a bunch of things that we went through that detailed list of. So the 38 was really a really early number of the challenges we faced. And I'm going to be bringing y'all that number for this year. We don't have it yet because it's really too early, and the big numbers I'm going to explain that we don't have. But the 38 million was that first meeting where I said, here's the charter schools, here's the insurance fund, here's all the things that we have to do, and we're going to come back with some solutions. And we worked very hard and very long and came back with solutions and came with a balanced budget. So we have a balanced budget in 24. The 38 million, I think, is an old number coming from an old meeting way back in January of 24. But I don't know if they went to the history to pull that. $30 million, $8 million, and we had a $38 million problem. We solved it. Not perfectly, but we solved it. This is the adopted budget. I believe somebody was asking me what was the total the other day. $805 million. We're approaching $1 billion here. Of course, this the construction fund is a huge amount of that. So this is really high right now because we're building a high school. So this is going to come down significantly. You can see the general fund is about 350, and then the 2002 tax is another 30. In my book, when people ask about operating funds, I would add the general fund and the 2002 tax together because the 87 tax is in here already, so that's your three major funds. The rest of this stuff is either debt or it's grants or it's food service or running the sales tax office. So operationally, we're more around 354 in the 30, but in total this year we're at $805 million. Quite a large budget. Potential challenges and threats. So I'm going to list this, but I'm going to go to each one in details. We have declining enrollment. We have charter school growth and expansion and the associated transfer of local funds to those charters. The effect of the dedicated taxes being diverted to charter schools. And when we talked about the reductions without any kind of accountability, the slowdown in the local economy, potential associated risk in sales tax collections. Sales taxes are currently stable, but they're not increasing. We've seen years of very much increasing. That increase has topped off. We haven't seen a decline, which is good. Unfortunately, we budgeted a certain incline that hasn't happened, but I think we're still going to be okay. One-time fund used to balance the budget. When we plugged the 38 million, we had some one-time money that we used. To help us with that, the Long Range Planning Committee, we have some unfunded capital projects and 26 capital budget used to fund the Southside Stadium. So we're also going to go over the capital budget. When y'all decided to use all the money from capital for next year and this year to build Southside Stadium, we're going to have a bare bones budget, but we will have a lot of projects still in the pipe that I'm going to talk about tomorrow. You can see still a lot going on, even though we're not going to have any new projects. The need to renew the 7.79 mills. That's a reduction that we cannot afford to have. We're going to talk about that process, how that's going to start, and how many chances we have to get that passed, and the pending constitutional amendment on inventory tax. I added that at the last minute because we just found out about it last week, some of the details. We're going to go through it, and then Mandy's going to come back and talk to us after this. This is our enrollment. We updated it. This was last year. That's what y'all saw. We're down to 28,759. So this is our total enrollment. We are headed in a negative pattern. And the difference between this and this is almost to charter school enrollment, people going to charter schools. You can almost track that almost student for student. At the same time, we're having another increase in SPED students. They're very expensive. Fortunately, it's not as bad as last year. This was last year, this was this year. So although we gained another 97 students, not nearly the 300 we gained in the previous year. So as the reduction in student count hits our ratio and Jennifer goes in and staffing the schools, I'm expecting to see some money coming back into the budget. Last year was way less than half of what I thought it was, and we dug into the numbers, and it was because we had such a spike in SPED students, special autistic students, that cost a lot more money, that we saw that reduction come from, I had estimated about 5 million to more like 2 million. So this year I'm expecting, once they get into the ratio and start restaffing the schools, that we'll see some money come back in the budget to help us balance some of our challenges. Charter school estimates.
So I said I would revisit the charter school situation that we're currently in. So as of October 1st, we learned that we have lost 680 students. Yes, they could have gone to a charter school, they could have gone to a private school, it doesn't matter. 680 is a large number, and fortunately I was able to calculate and put a number to it. So it happens to be, which I anticipate to be $7.7 million. Now, fortunately for us, during the last budget season, we considered this, and it's already baked into the budget, so we don't have to go looking for 7.7 this school year. It's already in the budget, right?
We don't know the real number until March.
Right, so based on the February count, we should find something out in March. Once the state updates their MFP budget letter, then we'll know what the actual hit is. But I anticipate it's going to be at least this.
And that's just for the second half of the year, or that's for the entire year?
As far as?
One of the challenges was the amount of charter schools which we deducted from the budget.
Okay.
Or we increased transfers as an expense to offset that, but it was an estimate. And that formula was so convoluted.
Yeah.
We don't know till we don't know. And the lady that does the MFP formula at the DOE quit. So hopefully we'll see an accurate formula come, and we won't know until March, which is another reason we kind of pushed the budget adoption process a little bit. We're hoping we budgeted enough. For that, we won't know until March.
Right. So the 680 we know now, right? So based on the February count, we could get students back. So of course it'll offset this,
Yeah,
but we'll know later
But
on.
just for that second half payment, right?
Just the half.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you.
So the issue is next school year, right? We know that on the north side of Lafayette, there's going to be a middle school, a charter middle school, and we're projecting 800 students that we can possibly lose. And based on that, that equates to roughly $9 million. So that is going to be one of our challenges during this budget season. And to make matters worse, the year after that, we're looking at a charter school in Broussard, which could be another 800 kids, which again is another $9 million roughly. So now we're looking at $18 million in fiscal year 26-27. So that's part of our challenges going forward. So on this slide, on this chart, this is a representation of our local taxation dollars being diverted to charter schools. So if you scroll down fiscal year 2025. This encompasses the 680 kids that we have lost this year, right? So I anticipate that we will be sending $36 million of our local taxation, which is property taxes and sales taxes, to charter schools this year. And then in fiscal year 26, this also encompasses a projected 800 student count loss, which equates to $41.5 million, and the following year, $46.8 million. That's just local taxations. We're not even talking about the state MFP dollars at this point.
And that's the price of an elementary school.
Yes,
What would be the total, can you tell us with the MFP?
I'll get to that next few slides.
Sorry.
Yes, no problem. So this is the graphical representation, and you can see that their footprint is steadily climbing. So in this chart, to answer your question, this is state MFP dollars and local taxation. Back to 2025, I anticipate $60.7 million, right? Fiscal year 26, 69.7, and in fiscal year 27, $78.8 billion. That's probably a K-8 school. And the footprint, steadily rising.
We had talked about sales tax. This is our latest sales tax report. The orange is the current line. As you can see, we've been a little below and a little above every month. So we cannot expect a huge increase in sales tax collections. We budgeted conservatively, so we're hoping if we see stability, we might be able to increase the budget slightly because we conservatively budgeted this year. Once we determine that we're not going to be heading down, we may have a little space on here, but it's not going to be a lot. Self-funded health insurance. This is a huge challenge, as you know. And here we are in our fiscal year 24 actual. So operating deficit ended up, this is the audited number from the self-funded insurance, lost $8.6 million last year. That's the actual operating loss. We sent them $6.6 million from the general fund. That was one of our challenges last year. And ended up with a net operating deficit in that fund of $2 million. They had a fund balance of 4.3. You take the loss out of that, they're coming into this year with a fund balance of just $2.2 million. The fiscal year 25 projected, so per Gallagher, the last report we got, they're expecting another deficit of $7.6 million. Budgeted in the general fund is another $6.6 million. So we're projecting another loss of almost $1 million in the self-funded this year. You take that from the fund balance, you will go into 26 with a fund balance of only $1.3 million. If you add the operating deficits from the last 2 years, we're looking at $16 million for those 2 years just in health insurance. Just the general fund transfer was 13.2. To put that in perspective, Southside Stadium was $12 million. So you've just absorbed a whole football stadium into the self-funded insurance account. And so just, that's kind of a reference of what this thing is losing. Here, I see this as potentially an opportunity in the budget. So right now in the budget, what we'll roll forward is $6.6 million transfer. If I can bring that down significantly, that can help offset some of the other challenges we have. So I'm looking to the board and to the staff to really be creative on this. And I met with Trish, and Trish being Trish, gave me like a book and about 3 pages of stuff. I'm going to just go over them quickly because what I understand is that Jennifer will be holding a workshop sometimes in February for all the board members, not only get educated on the potential changes, but on the basics of our self-funded insurance, because we're hearing a lot of misinformation from employees to school board members. School board members need to be educated on what actually happens from staff and from the experts, and we believe she's going to be putting that on in February. So, increased claims, we've got medical inflation. Here's some of the challenges. They're expecting medical inflation to be almost 40% in the next 2 years. That's ridiculous. Open enrollment changes, so we've had a lot of people switch to the high deductible plan, which is good for claims, but not good for revenue. And there'll be also some claims in the pipe that we don't know about that's going to be coming in as these people were on the old plan have better, higher claims. The premium increase, the board approved October 9th, effective January 1st. So as we go forward and we're looking at balancing this fund, and we're looking at premium increases versus changes in the plan, keep in mind that almost 70% of the funding is funded by the school system. So if you increase the premiums, you're really increasing the load on the general fund or any fund that funds insurance. So, in that perspective, your real savings is going to be coming from plan changes, not premium increases, which is both negative, not only to the employee, but only at 30%. So the 6.6 won't help if I have to put 4 back in because of the premium increase. Get the math there. Dependent audit, as you know, that's going on. We're hoping to save about $237,000 and $1.4 million next year. Tria Health and pharmacy consolidation, all these things you may have heard of. These are all things going on. This is what I wanted to really highlight, the 70% of the general fund for any future rate increases. One potential big thing is the RFP for pharmacy benefits. They're thinking that may be like a $3 million savings there. So that's probably the biggest thing in all of these things that are coming on the Medicare Advantage. We had talked about that. The design changes, that's Gallagher's working on a bunch of different things for that. Continuation of the dependent audit compliance. There's a lot of paperwork in this, but if you don't maintain it, then people, get divorced and don't take their spouse off. Dependents drop off, and we continue to cover them. You're still going to have some kind of maintenance, so they're working on this and maybe how to handle this internally. So they're going to be coming back with a plan for you of that. Vesting, that has been kind of a political football going back and forth. It's got its pluses and minuses from recruitment to just what actual savings you may get from that. There's going to be a Go to the Doctor campaign. But here is the potential health insurance workshop for all board members in February. So hopefully, everyone's spent a whole bunch of time on this, but this is going to be, to me, one of the top 5 challenges that you're going to have in this new budget is bringing that 6.6 to something more manageable. 0 would be great. Less than 6 would be good. One-time funds, in our challenges to balance the budget last year, we used about $4.3 million of special revenue funds we set aside basically from ESSER. And we had sent some money from self-funded construction. So you had about $7.8 million in one-time money to balance that. The good thing is that we're looking into maybe refreshing this fund and maybe having some more money for next year again, because we did a very good job of ESSER in the end of mopping up every dollar that was not spent and going back and repurchasing stuff we had already bought. So we had bought $2 million of textbooks in the general fund, but because ESSER allows the planting, which is incredibly unique, we can go back and pay ourselves back. So as soon as we paid out that one-time one-time stipend, we went back and vacuumed every dollar out of every budget we could find in ESSER and paid ourselves back for textbooks. And I give that credit to our accounting department and to Latika. We're very lucky to have Latika on board to get the expertise that we needed to take that money. So I'm hoping this year, if we need to, we can come back with some one-time money to help us. I say it's not kicking the can down the road; it's making the can smaller. You're going to kick a bigger can to smaller so you can absorb it much easier than trying to take it all in 1 year. If you don't have to, it gives the opportunity for growth to maybe grow out of this. Maybe to get some legislation control on charter schools, and maybe to start doing what we need to be competitive to keep these kids in our schools. That's not something that's going to happen overnight. If we can give y'all some years to make that happen by using one-time money that we have absorbed through ESSER, that's something we're going to try to do.
Hey Matt, I know you explained to me on an email, but just so everybody can know, we also have to purchase books for the private schools, and then we get reimbursed from the state for that. And then you said we also get some type of fee, additional fee for doing that?
Yeah, small fee on
It's
top of
small?
that, very small.
Okay.
And yeah.
Is there negotiation or rates or anything else when we're buying the textbooks?
I think we buy the textbook through the purchasing process and through the state funding. I know, I think Heather's the one that works with them directly, back and forth, getting those requisitions in, because they do process it through our purchasing department. There's some overhead we incur to have that done, and they do pay a slight.
Does the fee offset the overhead?
I mean, how do you track, time for a PO
Yeah.
if you're doing 20 other ones? It's not like we have a department that does just private school textbooks. It kind of gets melded in with everything else we do. It just gets processed in a big batch. So there's not really any reconciliation per se.
Yeah. I just love that the public schools have to not only be in charge of helping the charter schools get their money, but we also have to help the private schools get their services as well.
And the grants, we also have grants.
Yeah, so
It's the Title I money.
that's a lot
Yeah.
to do onto the public school system.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't do it.
And that's, yeah, so
Most
I want to
people
point it
don't
out.
do that.
And buses, we have to.
And we also
provide transportation.
Provide private school transportation. I'm informed that that's not necessarily required, but we do that. That could be a discussion. We do have a tax coming up. Just keep that in mind. And the savings from that, I think, has been it's been difficult because the routes are all intertwined. So with Ross having to reroute all the schools due to the changes, I think maybe we can look at that in the future if y'all would like, or what that could possibly save on not providing private school transportation. I know other districts don't do it, but I think it's kind of bought us maybe some support in the community with private school people. Not sure.
I think we need to communicate that though.
Definitely has to be a conversation.
Okay.
What, maybe I'm going off track here, but with school vouchers and, possible funding going to people who choose private school, is that gonna take from our?
From what I understand,
Can you explain how that-
it will in the terms of MFP. So if we lose a student to a private school, we lose MFP. If we lose a student to a charter school, we lose MFP and the local revenue, which is more. So a charter school, losing a kid from one of our schools to a charter school is the worst and most expensive thing. A new kid coming in and choosing to go to private school, we never had that money. And we never had that kid, right? A kid that comes with a voucher will go to private school, so we won't get that MFP, but as of now, we won't, but because of the affordability of that, I really see them coming back trying to make us pay for it, just like they did charter schools. When charter schools started, the state funded it. So, it's all to see.
It's local revenue per head, or it's just you get whatever percentage of the local revenue?
It's based on the makeup of the students, just like.
So it is enrollment, just like MSP, because a lot of people say, oh, well, y'all are getting a lot of money for our private school student, and the truth is, no, we're getting per head,
It's per head.
period. Like per head that's enrolled in our schools, that's how they determine how much we get for local revenue and state revenue, correct?
The local revenue is what we get. The only thing that's tied to head count is MFP.
MSP, okay.
If we collect taxes, we collect taxes.
Yeah. Okay.
It's kind of different. It's two separate things.
Okay, yeah.
So,
Yes,
To
ma'am.
go back on talking about staff and working on the different aspects of, like if it was procurement or some other area. So we don't like prorate out, we don't cost out what that percentage would be, like the time and effort for them doing those particular.
The state determines, just like indirect cost, the state determines a rate and they send us a rate.
That,
It's an indirect cost percentage.
right,
Yeah.
so it's already established.
Yes.
Right, the rate's
Pulling from
established.
that IDC.
Right, and the indirect cost is pulled from our financials of things that they determine are indirect costable. That's not a word, but qualify.
What's that percentage? What's that IDC?
What's the current indirect cost? Well, it's different for ESSER, it's higher, it's
I think it's
17.
decreased, going forward, I don't recall exactly.
7%. I mean, we'd have to, it changes every year.
What I was gonna say is that, when you get this group of legislators together, when you get some of you guys to come in, and by all means, I think they need to be educated.
Yeah, they do.
So this is the, we're dropping to the capital improvement funds. So this is the actual draft of the actual budget. We don't normally have it this early because normally we would have that money that we spent on the south side would have gone to all the principals. They would have come and give us projects and we'd spend 2 or 3 days going through each project and determining which one we're gonna fund. That's not gonna happen because we don't have that money. So basically you have the bare bones things that you have to do, like classroom furniture and and paying for the staff that comes out of there needs to still be in the budget. So here's gonna be a capital improvement budget for that you're gonna see coming in '26. And this, but on the other hand, you're not gonna see nothing happening at the school. These are all the projects in that first fund that are in the pipe that will be happening during the year. So you're still gonna see a lot of stuff happening in schools, but it's just not gonna be anything new. And this is the list of the lockbox projects that they've gotten here. They either get removed by a board or they get funded and done, or they may just hang out for years for some specific reason if we can't get to it, or if there's an issue with it. And but if we do change it, it does come back to the board if we pull anything out of this list. And this is the self-funded construction, which is a little bit bigger, so that list is even longer. So these are all the things that will be happening at next year. So even though we won't have any extra money, a lot of stuff still will be happening at the schools. This is the long-range planning committee. So this is the last board item we have, and it's outdated because it still has Southside in here. And this is where the board moved J.W. Falk from the replacement to the public additions, to the additions and renovations. So these are the projects currently that we have technically online, and so funding whatever we need to do for these projects is yet another potential challenge if we want to go forward with any of them. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up because that's something that we have taken into consideration as we move forward with all the other challenges. Property taxes. This is the property tax schedule. We have 4 different property taxes. Constitutional is basically constitutional. That goes on forever. It doesn't renew, and it's currently at 4.92. The other 3 taxes are all by the will of the voters, and those are 10-year taxes that have to be renewed. The 7.79 mills will expire in assessment year 26, fiscal year 27. So we will have to go to the voters and renew that. We have to start that process way, way early. This 7.79 mills equates about $22.2 million. This is something this is more than a challenge. This is a game changer if this doesn't get renewed. So our job is to try to maximize the number of opportunities that we have to make that renewal within the law. This is the, you saw this last year, the voting results of the last 4 elections. As you can see, in 2015, we had a 57% yes vote. November of 2020, it was a 60%, and that dropped to 54 for the 16.7 mils renewal. And of course, in April 2017, we had a tax that failed, 41 to 59. So just to give you an idea of the history of these renewals, here's the latest information on that. The renewal of the 779 mills will expire in 26. At a minimum, this must be renewed by voters in the spring election of 27. If a renewal attempt fails, it cannot be placed back on the ballot for at least 6 months. So you have to go and you have to look at the election schedule and the 6-month schedule and try, because sometimes the 6 months will eat up 2 election cycles. So you can only have an election on election date. So that limits us the time we can go and the numbers we can go. Due to the limitation of the renewals, we like to start this process 2 or 3 years before it expired. We had talked about this last time, but chose not to do this currently, but to wait until later. Based on the election calendar, we've discussed this, and we feel that an election date of October 11th would give us 2 additional attempts if the tax renewal fails and not get voter approval. Should the October 11th renewal fail, we could place it back on May 2nd with an additional opportunity December 5th of 2026, should that one fail. So this would give us 3 tries, which I think is the best we can get right now. Election date of November 15th would only give us 1 additional attempt to renew this millage. So that's why the way that the calendar fell, if you do October, you have 3. If you wait less than a month later, you only have 2. So we have kind of discussed this internally with the superintendent and Tracy, and feel that the October 11th is the best process to go with, the best date to go with. We will be opening the new Lafayette High in August. That'll be a grand ribbon cutting of a state-of-the-art school. I think we should be feeling pretty good, or the taxpayers should be feeling good on how we spent their money with that facility, so that may be a good time. So for an October election, you have to start in March. So in March, you're going to have a board item, basically an announcement. Britt will just have to read, hey, we're looking at doing a tax in 2027. Then we sent out a bunch of emails to all the legislators. There's like 12 steps to get this done, but we're going to start it in March, just letting you know. You'll be seeing that in the March. Tracy, any comment?
No, like you said, we talked about the timing and felt like that would give us enough time for them to do the things that they needed to do in order to get it on the ballot, but still leave them enough time on the back end just in case. But hopefully that bears out because the percentages worked in our favor in previous renewals.
So board members, I met with Tracy, and just so that you guys know, we're gonna be looking at getting some additional help from an outside communication, because we're really gonna go lockstep and go after this and be aggressive as far as making sure that we get this passed. We're gonna start hitting civic organizations. I'm gonna start talking to different people about it. I'm gonna hopefully reference a lot of the things that we're gonna do this spring as far as the budget, because they're hearing that we're struggling. They're hearing that we're doing different things. We have to be able to bring that to light when we're gonna be asking them to back certain things. I will tell you the one thing that I've been through 6 different elections myself. We gotta get our employees to vote. If we get our employees to vote, it's a slam dunk. And we're gonna do that. We're gonna make sure that the people who live in Lafayette Parish, we will know who they are, and we're going to be after them to make sure that they get the right people to the polls. We need this is an $18 million, listen to this, $18 million of operational cuts that would have to be made if we don't get this renewal taken care of.
It's 22, the 18 was the old number, yeah, I think it
We got worse.
Wait,
his,
how much of that goes to the charter school too?
well, it depends on the student now, so.
Right,
you know, it's-
so it shouldn't be that we should be the only ones fighting for this. If the charter schools need that money too, they need to be, so we need to find a way to partner. I know we don't like to partner, but
Y'all can partner with me.
I mean, but the thing is, we gotta, this is gonna benefit all students in Lafayette Parish, so everybody needs to be fighting for this to pass. Otherwise, we suffer, they suffer. I mean, we're gonna have to still cut them the same check, whether we get that 18 million or, I mean, we're gonna have to reduce and
They're gonna get both sides.
we're all on the same team, but.
They're gonna get it.
Yeah.
To put the point of the superintendent, so look at the votes here. So we've got 5,000 employees. If an employee has one dependent or one spouse or it's 2 people now, that's 10,000 votes. If you can look, they only had 52,000 votes on here. We won by 30. If we can put out 10,000 votes, you can pretty skew this pretty well if you get our people out and if you get them to vote. I'm going to point that out from the head count here. Constitutional amendment. So there's a detailed presentation followed by the tax assessor. Of course, I think he keep making. I think Mandy's going to be here. Mandy Mitchell from Alita. But basically, the elections is on the end of March. It eliminates the state credit to companies for local inventory taxes. It gives the sheriff, the school board, and the parish authority exempt business inventory from taxes. So basically, what happens is these companies pay local entities a property tax, and they get an 80% rebate from the state. The state didn't like that expense, so they pretty much got rid of it, and will give the option to the locals to get rid of the tax completely. The exemption decision has to be unanimous by all 3 parties, the sheriff, the parish, and the school board. It doesn't have to be unanimous by each party, it has to be unanimous by the voting in the whole. So you could have a 5-4 vote, but the school board would either be a yes or no. A no from any of them is a no from all of them. This vote has to be done before 7/1/26, and that is for the 2026 tax year and the fiscal year 27 budget for us. Parishes electing exemption should receive a payment from the state of 3 times coverage, but unfortunately they limited that to $15 million per parish. With we're projecting that the portion of the school systems would only be $5.4 million. We actually lose $9.8 million per year. This would be a one-time payment. It's nowhere near 3 times the payment would be about $29.4 million. So they're going to discuss this a little bit. I think there's maybe some possibilities for this $15 million gap to be lifted, because if you look at the listing, it's $15 million they've estimated, they've given an amount for all the parishes, and we're hearing that the parishes along the river will continue to charge the tax to the industrial companies that are on the river, because they see it's such a significant portion of revenue to their district that they cannot not do it. So they're gonna have a pact, and if they don't have to pay those districts all that money, we're hoping that they can just divert it back to us and make us whole again. So part of this is gonna be a negotiation process. We think if it does pass, so this is one of the other reasons we're kind of waiting, because we need to see what happens with this. But Randy's going to be talking about that much more in detail. We'll do real quick about some opportunities: staffing reduction due to enrollment decline, program consolidation, under budgeted growth in property tax collections, reduction in retirement rate and one-time funds due to ESSER, which I've already talked about. Staffing reductions, the elimination of the pre-K class immersions and arts and funded by the state is a savings of about $891,000. I'm being, I have only 5 minutes, I'm gonna go fast. The increase in high school ratio, we went from 29 to 30, that's gonna save us about $726,000. So things are going on right now. Here's the stuff we don't know: the staffing reduction due to enrollment decline and strategic utilization of staffing. I know that the academic department is working very hard to look at exactly how things are staffed to see if there's something we can save money without significantly affecting the programs. So all that, this is a big number, hopefully, that can help us balance the budget. Growth in property tax collections, we did estimate very conservatively. We think we have another $4 million in property tax collections that will be available based on the fact that next year our millage will roll down based on what the board voted. So even though we have an increase in collections, the millage will go down. So our expected $9 million turns to 4, basically. Simple math on that one. We did get some reduction in retirement rates. So for TRSL, we should save about $780,000, another $658 in SRES from reduction in retirement rates. And that's it. We look forward to working with you and trying to get this resolved.
Thank you.
5 minutes, guys. 5 minutes short. We're running way behind.
Hey, Mandy is going to be getting here soon, and she's the last presenter. But if we see